What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the 10-7 MMA Show, and it's me, the super MMA fan, Huzaifa. Unfortunately, Justin's not going to be able to join today. Celine, sorry about that. I know you're a big fan of Justin, but unfortunately, we are both actually back in Michigan right now because in the States, it is Thanksgiving week. So Thursday was the day of the big dinner. That was yesterday, and Justin unfortunately had something come up and he's not going to be able to make it. But I still want to do the show because I've been wanting to do another show since Monday, just talk about all the stuff that's been going on in the week pertaining to the UFC and to the world of mixed martial arts in particular. A lot of news has happened, even though there hasn't been a crazy amount of fights. One thing I did want to talk about today, which we didn't talk about on Monday, is UFC in Macau last Saturday with this amazing fight between Petr Yan and Deiveson Figueiredo, which I finally had a chance to watch. I didn't watch it live, but it was an incredible fight. And I thought both guys actually put on a pretty good performance, although obviously Petr Yan's performance was superior. He came out the victor with a 50-45 victory, although Deiveson Figueiredo had his moments, but it was a really good fight and very interesting for the bantamweight division overall. So anyways, without further ado, and guys, let me know how the show goes because obviously we don't have the expertise of Justin today. It's just a solo show. I'm going to be giving my takes. Let me know if you think I do a good job, a poor job, a medium job in terms of talking about the specifics as best I can, but I will do my best, as I mentioned. So there have been a lot of interesting things that have been going on. One of those interesting things, very interesting things, is we finally got to hear from Robert Whittaker after that crazy fight he had against Khamzat Chimaev. And I always think some of my favorite interviews are when fighters come on and talk about a previous fight that they recently lost, especially if they come on pretty soon after the loss. Because I think the majority of fighters, rightfully so, by the way, want to take a break, want to collect their thoughts. And I think it's quite a big deal in terms of the mental anguish and the emotional trauma that they go through when they go through a loss. It's like these guys always say, and Justin can attest to this as well. And I've seen him, after fights, sometimes after losses, he's actually in really good spirits. What Justin told me, I think the last time that he went out and lost was, I don't feel bad at all because I gave my absolute best performance. The guy threw a spinning heel kick that I'd never seen before, that we never saw any tape on. It must have been perhaps maybe a new technique he'd been working on or finally felt comfortable enough to using in the fight. He had no clue. He did his best and he felt good about that loss because he put his best foot forward. I think that's a really great positive mindset. But I imagine some fighters don't feel the same, and taking a loss can be really traumatizing and the lowest of lows. So we usually don't hear fighters talk about losses until like months later, maybe when they're back in training camp or they're starting to think about it the next fight. But credit to Robert Whittaker, just a few weeks after suffering this pretty brutal loss to Khamzat Chimaev, he comes on his podcast, the MMA Arcade podcast, which is a great podcast, by the way, at least the MMA side. They also talk about video games, which is not that of much interest to me, but it's a great podcast because you can always watch the first half if you just want to listen to MMA, second half if you just want to listen to video games, whatever. But anyway, so we get that treat of hearing Robert Whittaker. By the way, the cool thing about this podcast and Robert Whittaker in particular, man, him and I think Kamaru Usman have become two of my favorite people to listen to in terms of breaking down fights, talking about who they think has the advantage and so on and so forth. Really, really technical yet digestible analysis is provided by both guys. So I highly recommend both of their shows, Pound for Pound, as well as MM Arcade or MMA Arcade, however they say it. So, anyways, without further ado, we're gonna jump over and check out some of this footage from the recent episode released earlier this week. Listen to Robert Whittaker and his thoughts about the fight and what exactly went down. And we're also going to hear Robert Whittaker talk about what he believes is the future for Khamzat Chimaev, which is super cool because, as you guys may or may not know, Khamzat is my favorite fighter. And this is very inspiring for me because Robert Whittaker, he's one of the most honest and truthful and straightforward guys in the world of mixed martial arts, in the UFC in particular. Man, I think this is proof positive right here that Khamzat is on a tear and is about to get the belt pretty soon, pretty close to it. So without further ado, let's check out this clip and we're going to dissect it a little bit more deeply. And let me know what you guys think in the chat. All right, here we go.
Like within seconds of the fight starting, I felt real comfortable standing with him, like real comfortable. But then the dude drops to like a millimeter. How do you stop that takedown, guy? Like,
you just don't.
And understandably, it's like we did a lot of wrestling, we did a lot of stuff.
So I think that's a really interesting point. Just listen to how he talks about it. It's not like, man, I almost had it. I made a mistake. I adjusted my position this way when I could have stuffed the takedown. I totally blew it. He is talking about it as if he's in awe of that takedown and the speed and the height to which he dropped. I mean, Lorosenko and other commentators talked about it in terms of, you know, it was a combination of things. It's the speed at which he drops. It's the level to which he gets down to. That's unique. And then because he comes in with such speed and power, he's able to shoot from really far away. And I think that's the key, is that usually people would have time. And again, this is a non-fighter giving his breakdown here, but usually you would have enough time to react and to potentially stuff a takedown. The problem with Khamzat is because of the combination of speed and skills and power, etc. Even if you see it coming, sort of reminiscent of Khabib, even if you know what's coming and if you're trying to anticipate it, you still can't stop it. And I think that's what Robert Whittaker is talking about, which is, again, what separates Khamzat from the pack. But let's keep listening.
We did a lot of wall work, but mate, it's so hard to replicate that sort of takedown, that sort of commitment. And, you know, props to him. Guy knows his strengths, played into him to a T, and is willing to burn it all there for it, right? But anyway, takedown goes in, ankle picks me off the fence. Like it was a great takedown. It was a beautiful takedown.
Yeah.
But then we get to the wall work, and I felt good. Like I understood. Like he has a really heavy sag. He's not ridiculously strong or anything like that, but he had a really heavy sag. And he was really good at giving like.
By the way, when he's talking about the heavy sag, I think it's the weight and the way he's distributing his weight on top of Robert Whittaker that is what he's describing. I'm going to double check and confirm this with Justin, but I believe that's what he's talking about. And the interesting thing about that is Dustin Poirier, when he described fighting Khabib Nurmagomedov, he said something similar. He said it's not that he was crazy strong, but his balance and the way he distributed his weight was unique and almost picture perfect. And that's what made it so hard to get out from under him. And I feel like Robert Whittaker is describing something very similar. All right, let's keep listening.
Making me work. Like he was really good at making sure he was active. Like he was always kind of reaching for underhooks, reaching for ankle picks, trying to get a hook in. He was like making me work, staying active. You know, during the whole time he's kind of sagging me. But even then, I knew that the squeeze that he was pushing on going to be very hard to sustain that throughout the rounds. I understood we had 5 rounds, right? And I could feel some of the space opening up later on. But anyway, but obviously it happens. We transition, and then mate, he puts his forearm across my face for the face crank, right? And it was just picture perfect, like landed square between my, there's that dimple part between your chin and your lip. It's like it just hits right there, and within like instantly, my teeth gave out, like instantly.
Now that is crazy, right? And people thought he had fractured the jaw, and so obviously, I know some Robert Whittaker fans or anti-Khamzat people or whatever were saying, okay, well, he only won because Robert had some pre-existing condition with his bottom teeth, and that's what ended the fight. So maybe it really wouldn't have ended that quickly. I'm not sure I agree with that. Obviously, I might be a little bit biased, but the reason why I say that is because if you do watch the episodes of Khamzat training leading up to that UFC fight against Robert Whittaker, he was actively practicing the face crank. Because what I believe, and he hasn't said this, but what I believe is that he's actually perfected the face crank compared to other fighters. And again, because of maybe the angle he takes or the pressure or the strength or a combination thereof, he's able to exert enough pressure on people via face crank to get them to tap. I'm just guessing, but I do think that makes sense. Again, if you just rewatch that training footage, they show a clip of him putting a guy while sparring, doing some sparring wrestling, putting a guy into a face crank position, squeezing. So I actually think that he had a high likelihood of finishing maybe anybody, not just Robert Whittaker, but anybody with a face crank regardless of whether or not they have a problem with their lower teeth or lower jaw, etc. So anyways, just food for thought. Okay, but anyways, that's the gist of it. He describes it, and he's very respectful and gives Khamzat his props. But later in this episode, and let me stop the share here. Later in this episode, he's now then asked, all right, so you had this, what are you doing now? And actually, Robert Whittaker, he said it's kind of a blessing in disguise because he now had his bottom teeth completely removed. And it looks like he may even have had some sort of prosthetic put in, or maybe dental implants. I don't know, something like that. Because it looks like he has bottom teeth again. That's what it looks like. And he's even back in sparring, training, ready to go again. He's happy to fight whoever. That's the Robert Whittaker fighting spirit that we all have come to love, and why he's so popular and fan friendly, because he's just an honest, straight shooter guy who's willing to take on anybody. Who else was willing to take on Khamzat? Nobody. So mad props, mad respect to Robert Whittaker. And then he goes on to talk about what he believes should be next for Khamzat and what type of threat he poses in the middleweight division. Again, true to form, Robert Whittaker talks very openly and honestly about Khamzat's capabilities, and this was really cool to hear. So let's take a listen to this little clip here. Check it out.
I think you should go straight to Dricus.
Yeah.
I don't think sitting out should be rewarded ever. Right. But
right, obviously, what is he talking about? He's talking about Sean Strickland sitting out, waiting for the fight. So he believes that Khamzat should jump straight in and get that Dricus fight. Who knows what's going to happen? Sometimes we hear that, hey, we think that is going to happen. That would be a massive money fight, but I'm sure there's a lot of logistic issues that may or may not favor the Dricus versus Khamzat fight next. Sometimes I see things pop up that say, nope, Dana White is saying Strickland is going to be next. And then I see him saying he's not sure. We're going to see. So I don't know. I hope it comes out next. I think that's going to be such a massive fight. And I'd much, much, much rather see that fight. Although I'm interested to see Strickland take on Duplessis again for a rematch. But 10% is exciting, in my opinion. Maybe less, maybe 1% is exciting than seeing Khamzat go in there and get his first crack of the belt. But anyways, let's keep it going.
Not my call, not my decision.
Well, look, in all likelihood, if that was a fight they wanted to put together, UFC in Sydney, right? Did you actually know that Khamzat Chimaev is coming to Australia later this year to do like a tour or something? So visa seemingly isn't an issue. Dricus has obviously fought here before in Perth. And it seems like good timing. If there was ever a fight, and plus apparently maybe Sean Strickland doesn't want to fight in Australia. I don't know what's going on there. That could be good timing. I don't know. He tweets a lot of stuff, but I wasn't too sure.
I don't know. But yeah, I think he's going to be a nightmare for a lot of those dudes.
Yeah.
Right? And otherwise, yeah, that's me. That's a fight. Upsetting. Losing a fight is always.
So we're going to stop it there. He goes on to talk about how he's feeling. And once again, just such mad props to Robert Whittaker to get on at this point and to talk about this really sensitive fight and this loss and this traumatic injury that he went through. So mad respect. But what does he say, right? He says that Khamzat is going to be a nightmare. I don't think there's any other way to interpret it, that he believes, I mean, you tell me if you disagree, but he believes that Khamzat would be heavily favored, or at least strongly favored against Dricus, for sure against Izzy. I mean, I think there's no doubt at this point, probably against Strickland too. These talks about what happened when they spar, and I just don't, Khamzat just seems to me as a very truthful, honest, straight shooter. And he says maybe shouldn't have, maybe it's a violation of the gym code of ethics when you're not supposed to talk about sparring, but he does say whatever over and over. He has tapped out Sean Strickland repeatedly. Sean Strickland has now come out and started to attack Khamzat and say, all these things negatively about him. I mean, I don't know. You put two and two together, it does seem like Khamzat has had the advantage time and again when they have sparred at Extreme Couture. So I don't know. I think it's very exciting. And stop saying that Bo Nickel doesn't pose any sort of threat. I think we saw that last performance. There is no way that Bo Nickel anytime soon, if ever, I don't think ever, will pose any sort of threat. I mean, his striking looked, I don't know, it looked crazy to me. I asked Justin about it too once he watched it back. I was a bit shocked. Now again, I'm sure in the heat of the moment, you're under pressure. think maybe he's second guessing himself. He's not using his wrestling whatsoever in that entire fight. But I mean, come on. I just don't think Bo Nickel is nearly at that level. Khamzat trains his Muay Thai. We've seen his striking is actually quite impressive. He trains at Tiger Muay Thai, or has trained at Tiger Muay Thai. I mean, come on, let's put that to rest. But anyways, super cool. Mad respect to Robert Whittaker. Very interesting about Khamzat. All right, moving on. We come to the next story. So John Jones. Oh, shoot. I want to see if I can find this clip. I actually didn't cue this up. Let me pull it up as I kind of lay the foundation. But John Jones recently came out and he was having a back and forth with a fan. I think I found it here. Yeah, I found it. He was having a back and forth with a fan, talking about, the fan was calling him out for not wanting to fight Tom Aspinall. This whole narrative keeps on going and going. And I thought John Jones made a really clever response. Let me just see if I can find it here. I saw it earlier today when I was at the gym. Oh, no, this isn't the video. Hold on. John Jones said he would happily vacate his heavyweight title. Hold on. Just searching it up right now. Yeah, here it is. Here it is. I found it. Okay. So I'm just going to this part. Another thing that's funny too is they asked John Jones in a recent video, who, if any, MMA fighter would you want to have over for Thanksgiving dinner? And he said Daniel Cormier. It's so crazy. It seems like now that their feud is resolved or their fights are finished or whatever, I don't know. John Jones is like keeps trying to reach out to Daniel Cormier and mend the build a bridge, mend the fence, whatever you want to call it. Between him and Daniel Cormier. It's very interesting, but I like it. For one, I think it'd be cool if they did come to some sort of a better resolution. I feel like there is already a resolution. Daniel Cormier seems to just not want to be that close or that good of friends. It's very interesting that John Jones continues to reach out and really wants to build a friendship there, it seems like. But anyways, all right, let's check this out. John Jones said he is ready to vacate that title.
A fan tweeted at John saying, "Fight Tom, you pussy." John responded, "Why? I'm incredibly wealthy. I have achieved all my goals in the sport. Hall of Famer, broke many records. Serious question. Why should I fight again? While you're enjoying the day, eating junk, blazing up, and grinding on video games, just remember, your competition probably put in some sort of work today and is already scheming how to conquer 2025. Food for thought. Success isn't luck. It's a decision and the discipline to stick to it. Happy Thanksgiving."
I like that, though. I like that quote. This is, again, there's so many parallels that can be drawn between being an entrepreneur or trying to start a business or trying to be successful at anything and what these fighters go through, except for I believe what they go through is 10 times harder because you're also having all these psychological battles. You're having injuries. You're having, just dealing with your body, the ups and downs of that. I mean, nobody's even talking about the fact that John Jones had a horrendous injury before the Stipe fight and had to go through months of recovery and rehabilitation until he could even train again. Nobody wants to talk about that. They're just focusing on this whole thing. So anyways, I love that message. And I feel like this is one of the reasons why combat sports is so important, because for fans like me, because we can extract so much value and inspiration from their words and their journey. But anyways, let's keep listening to this whole exchange.
A fan tweeted, "Success is when you stop ducking." John,
like, who is this guy? Go back and rewatch all the. I was talking to one of my students the other day, and he's like, I don't think John Jones. He's a kid. He's, I think, in 10th grade. It's like, I don't see why John Jones has to fight anybody. Why does he have to prove anything at this point? I'm like, thank you. You're the one of the very few I feel like that has a correct opinion and stance on this. But I wouldn't be surprised if this guy is a very, very recent fan. Not saying like, I had my break from the UFC as well. It's not like I've been diehard since like 1992. I'm not going to say that. But if you just go back and watch John Jones' watch all his fights in the UFC back to back, okay? And then come to me and be like, he's got to fight Tom. He's got to fight Tom. He's like, dude, how many times has that come up where he's fighting up and comers, new contenders? I mean, there's got to be a point at which you're like, all right, enough is enough, right? And it's always going to be the same with every fighter. There's always going to be a new guy, a new challenge. You can't just go on and continue to do this endlessly, because eventually, you're going to, not saying losing is the end is such a big deal. I mean, even if he did lose, who cares? His legacy is already so fabulous and amazing. And it still would be even with a loss. And even if people want to argue that he's lost to other fighters previously. Dominic Reyes is the famous example. Fine. So what? Is his legacy all that terrible now just because he had one loss to Dominic Reyes? Doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But anyways, my point is he got nothing to prove at this point. And if you feel differently, go back and watch his entire catalog from start to finish and see how many up-and-comers, see how many killers he had to fight throughout this. There's always going to be somebody new. So, all right.
John fired back, saying, "Sure, call me Duck for the next year. Eventually, Tom will lose within the next 2 or 3 fights, and my legacy will go on as the greatest MMA fighter ever. End of story." A fan asked, "So you're retiring?" John replied, "I'd probably vacate the belt before officially retiring. Let's see how my meeting with UFC goes." Crazy how being called a duck pays better than most of you internet tough guys will make in a lifetime. 2 fights in 4 years and still one of the biggest names in the sport? That's not ducking. That's winning. God's blessings hit different. Stay mad.
And I still don't know what's going to happen. This is a very interesting story as it continues to unfold. I said earlier today or yesterday, I think on MMA Guru's live stream, that I do think John Jones, this was before I saw these clips come out in this Twitter exchange. I do think John Jones is going to fight Tom Aspinall because I think he's going to get a massive payday. And I actually think John Jones is going to beat Tom Aspinall. I think that he's just such an amazing, incredible, diverse, unique fighter with such a wide array of skills and techniques and attacks. Plus, he's so cerebral. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying it's a foregone conclusion. Maybe it's a 55% chance. Maybe it's a 60% chance because anything can happen, especially in the heavyweight division, especially how explosive and powerful Tom Aspinall is and what we've seen him do in so many fights in the first round, right? Kind of like Sergey Pavlovich, just explosive hands and explosive power. So we can't say anything for certain, but if I had to bet on that fight, I would bet John Jones. If I'm pressed to bet a large amount of money, I would bet John Jones. And so anyways, I actually think he will take the fight. I wouldn't be surprised if he's just continuing to troll the fans and maybe continue to just do this like sort of public negotiation. But I have no problem at all if he doesn't win. And by the way, he makes a really good point about Tom Aspinall. Now, I know people say how amazing and how talented he is, but it's the heavyweight division. Very few people remember, Stipe is the guy that has the longest title defense in the history of that division. It's like 3 title defenses or 4 title defenses. It's not a lot. And it's because the heavyweight division is so volatile because of the massive amount of knockout power in every fighter. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tom Aspinall does become champion, I'm sure. But something like what he's describing, where he goes out and then loses within 1 or 2 title defenses, and then 5 or 10 years from now, we look back and we're like, oh yeah, I remember that Tom Aspinall guy. Yeah, he was good. He was champ. I remember there was something about him wanting to fight John Jones, but it never materialized. And then the next guy came up and so on and so forth. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, because I think it's going to be very hard for anybody ever again to have a run like John Jones had. So for those of you John Jones haters, just go back, watch the entire catalog. I think you might change your mind. All right. Next story. Michael Chandler is receiving a lot of backlash. Dude, Michael Chandler's crazy. I don't even know what to think about him anymore. And I'll tell you guys this, like even Justin, who's trained with Michael Chandler, they're not like boys or anything, but they know each other and they're friends. And I remember him even saying something along the lines, well, I don't want to say because those are Justin's thoughts, so I'll let him share them if he wants. But anyways, I think a lot of people are, I don't know what to make of what Chandler's been saying lately on all these interviews and all these shows. He says on the show right after the loss, saying he's never been more beat up and more injured and in more pain than after the Oliveira fight. And then he goes on Ariel's show later saying that he barely took any damage. Very, very bizarre. And man, I don't know. It's a strange situation because he does try and well, I don't want to say put on a persona. I don't really know the exact situation or the true nature of Michael Chandler, but it starts to feel like he's almost playing a role of being the super, super, super moral and good guy that only says positive things, that doesn't swear, that does all these things. But then in the cage, he's like the super dirty fighter, which he's contesting now, which is crazy because it's all on camera. He's so, and then, I mean, I've heard again from Justin and other people that he's quite a dirty fighter when he's training too, that he's a jerk in training. Basically, he's very competitive. And so I'm really kind of not sure who the real Michael Chandler is, and I'm starting to think he's putting up some sort of a persona or fake. I don't know what's going on. But anyways, you guys judge for yourself. Let's listen to Michael Chandler. Let's check it out.
Michael Chandler still thinks he could beat Charles Oliveira. Chandler first fought Oliveira back in 2020.
By the way, he makes a statement in this interview that he thinks, I don't get it, is that he thinks he could beat Charles Oliveira 9 times out of 10, which is so weird. And I know he said that something happened to his nerve in his leg, and that's why he was off balance the entire time. But it's like, and again, that may be true, but you watch that Charles Oliveira Michael Chandler fight. I mean, my takeaway was like, man, there's just such a skill differential here. Charles Oliveira was in complete control of that entire fight until that brief period in the 5th round, where actually Michael Chandler, to his credit, nearly won. But I don't know, it just doesn't make sense. But let's listen.
Won when competing for the UFC title fight at UFC 262, where he lost by knockout in the 2nd round. In their rematch at UFC 309, Oliveira mauled Chandler for 4.5 rounds, earning a unanimous decision. During Wednesday's appearance on the Ariel Helwani show, Chandler stated that despite losing to Oliveira twice, he still believes he'd beat the Bronx 9 out of 10 times.
I mean, I'm not happy with my performance. I mean, I would give myself a 2 out of 10. I cannot overstate how horrible a performance this was, or set of circumstances it was after that first round, compared to what my vision was for what I am capable of. And I believe I beat Charles Oliveira 9 times out of 10. And obviously I've lost to him twice now, 2 out of 2. I have a 100% loss rate to Charles Oliveira. So I understand why people might tisk at that, roll their eyes at that.
Chandler also said that he did not hit Charles with any illegal shots to the back of the head, and that he's not happy with the narrative being painted by fans and the commentary team.
Splice it and look at it from under a fine-tooth comb and a magnifying glass. But the unified rules of mixed martial arts say that there is a line drawn from the crown of the head, if this were the back of the head, the crown of the head down to the neck, 1-inch variance on either side. So you're talking about a 2-inch area on the back of someone's head that is considered the back of the head. And if you watch 90% of the shots, at least, most of them, almost all of them, or at least where I was aiming, all of them, my fist was catching the ear. So if you're catching the ear, that is not the back of the head. And actually, the back of the head is not really, what you and I would call the back of the head is not what the actual definition of the back of the head is, that 2-inch strip down the back of the head. And a referee who was within 2 feet away never said one thing about it. And then you got commentators who were 35 feet away saying it's the back of the head. And then you got other people who are saying, hey, that's the back of the head. Just like
when he's saying other people, I think he's talking about MMA Joey. But yeah, let's keep watching.
Poirier fight.
Islam Makhachev.
Oh boy. Yeah. So I don't know. I think he's just making it worse and worse and worse for himself. It's like, so MMA Joey broke this down. You guys should check out his channel and watch his breakdown of the entire fight, or that exchange. To Michael Chandler's credit, he is right. And even MMA Joey said this. There are a lot of shots that were clean that he threw, that he did come in on the side, but there were shots that I think he was coming down and either his forearm or he hit him directly on the back of the head, at least a couple times. Okay. Now, when he says like 90%, fine, maybe that's probably an exaggeration, but maybe 7 out of 10 shots or something like that, maybe 70% did not hit the back of the head. So it wasn't like a barrage of back of the head shots, but maybe there was like 30% of them that were clearly to the back of the head. But that's one thing. He does make an interesting point. Look, there's a ref there. What are you going to say? Like, he's in the heat of the moment. He's doing his thing. The ref should have penalized him and stopped him or warned him or, taken a point away or something. And he didn't. Why didn't he? Maybe it wasn't as clear to him either. Says a point in favor of Michael Chandler, but then there's so many other things that he did that are just crazy. He had multiple fence grabs, which again, in the heat of the moment, you might just do it instinctively just to try and hold yourself up, survival instinct. I get that. But I did ask Justin about that, and he did feel as though he called him the dirtiest fighter in the UFC. That's coming straight from a fighter, not from me, not from just a random spectator. He also at one point went over the fence. I believe he was grabbing inside Charles Oliveira's gloves. And I think even at one point, Charles Oliveira complained, which is very interesting because there's points during that fight where Chandler said, hey, he wasn't doing any damage. He was just holding me there. So I don't see why he should have necessarily even won that round. I took no damage. But he glossed over the fact that why no damage or no progress was being made by Charles Oliveira because Chandler was holding on to his gloves. So there's all these crazy things. And then MMA Joey showed back that Dustin Poirier fight where he blew his nose on Dustin Poirier. And Dustin Poirier himself said that was disgusting. He did it on purpose. I know he did it on purpose. He's a dirty fighter. I think it's pretty clear what's going on here. And so, if you've ever encountered somebody in life that is, I'm not saying he's a pathological liar or anything, but if you ever encountered somebody that is one, and they will continue to press and do some like kind of manipulation, or maybe they'll even apologize at the beginning for messing up or saying, yeah, maybe I was a little dirty there or whatever. But then let's say you keep catching them over and over, and then eventually there comes a point, because I've had to deal with this in my life. There comes a point where it's like, look, you've caught them red-handed too many times, and you can't keep saying I'm sorry, because it's like, are you really sorry? You just did this like 5 times and you keep apologizing. Obviously, you know what you're doing, and you're really not sorry. What's going on with you? And then there comes a point where they're just like, no, they know they can't apologize anymore. So then they go into this defense mode where they just try and cover it up with lies, or they try and flip it back on other people. And I feel like that's what Chandler's doing now. Now he's saying that everybody needs to reread the rule books. Now he's talking about the 2-inch strip on the back of the head, clarifying the head strikes, like, just not taking accountability, being like, you know what? Yeah, like I did hit him probably in the back of the head when I look back at the tape, and I feel terrible about it, but in the heat of the moment, I didn't mean to. But again, you got to give me some credit here. That's the ref's job, not me. And when I'm in the heat of the moment and I'm doing my thing, like I can't see everything that's going on. That would have made more sense. But now he's actually trying to almost like act like it didn't happen. It's very bizarre. And then he's talking about too, I think he was also claiming that his hand over the fence or the fence grabs were not legit. MMA Joey showed that they in fact were. Very bizarre, very, very bizarre. And then you top it off with another call out to Conor McGregor after all this crazy stuff has come out about him and what he's going through. Man, I just think he lost a lot of fans on that fight, even though it was a really fun performance in the 5th round, seeing him almost mount a comeback, and it was very exciting. And in the heat of the moment, I loved it. So I will say that, but it's just very, very, very bizarre. Very bizarre. All right. Anyways, let's move on to our last topic today, which is coming down to the bantamweight division, arguably one of the most interesting divisions in the UFC. And looking at the champ in particular, Merab Dvalishvili released a video showing everybody who he thinks is potentially, in contention for a title shot for the next fight. He talks about Sean O'Malley. He talks about Petr Yan after this incredible win over Deiveson Figueiredo, which I finally watched in full. What a great fight. What a cool fight. Deiveson Figueiredo tried to take him down early. Petr Yan reversed that position in the 1st round, had tremendous takedown defense thereafter. His striking was just superior all around: speed, accuracy, technique, and even his cardio seemed stronger. I think Deiveson Figueiredo looked like he was slowing down in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds. Petr Yan was not, continued to come forward, had just beautiful striking, beautiful kicks, beautiful flying knees, everything. So it was picture perfect. But anyways, and then Merab says, yeah, but he takes Umar and he throws him at the bottom. Like, this guy doesn't deserve anything. It's just really weird, that he's just so adamant he doesn't want to fight Umar. And it does feel like ducking, right? Everybody's given John Jones so much crap about ducking, but they're not seeming to give much crap, to Merab about not wanting to fight Umar. Now, Aljo came on a podcast, I think today or yesterday, being like, man, it's really crazy how people think he's afraid or he's ducking. He's like, it has nothing to do with that. He did make a good point. And what his point is that, let's look at Merab's record, actually. We're going to talk about this for a second. I do get what Aljo was saying. It actually was really good context, but let me show you guys this. He was saying, it has nothing to do with ducking. It just, he feels it's so unfair given what he's had to go through in order to get a title shot. And then we'll also look at Umar's record. So look at this. Get into the, where's the UFC here? 1 second. All right. So his first UFC fight, he had 2 losses. Interesting. I did not know that he had 2 losses. But anyways, okay. Going back to 2018, 6 years ago. He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10, and then on his 11th fight in the UFC, he finally gets his title shot and wins. I get it. I get why he feels the way he does. And this is what Alja was saying. It's about that. It's about fairness. It's about what he had to go through. And then Umar getting a fight so quickly rubs him the wrong way. Although I still think Umar, it would make sense to me. I mean, it doesn't have to be pure equity every time. It's obviously not in the UFC. But anyways, now if we compare it to Umar's record, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I mean, he has had 6 victories. I think his point was that, hey, the people that he beat were not particularly known. I mean, I don't recognize any of these names. I mean, part of that is my fault. I'm not as crazy diehard of a fan as some folks who know like the entire rosters. I don't, right? Outside the top 10 or top 15, usually for most divisions. But I do know Brian Kelleher, but a lot of these names, outside of Corey Sandhagen, I don't really recognize. So that was his point. Although he's had six wins in the UFC. I mean, 6-0. It's not such a horrible argument to make that he could be deserving of a title shot. But anyways, this is what Alja was saying. That's why he doesn't feel it's fair. And I guess there's some merit to that. But man, yeah, he really does not want that fight. And then Umar came out and was like, yeah, if I was you, I wouldn't want to fight me either, saying that he just doesn't want to fight it because he thinks he's going to lose. I don't know. It's up for debate, I suppose. But if you ask me what I would do or what I would like to see, because I'm such a Sean O'Malley fan, I would like to see Sean O'Malley get a rematch. I think that's my suspicion. That's the direction that they're going in, and that's what they want. And it's going to kind of work out timing wise if they set that fight up in March or April, because I believe Sean O'Malley just got back into training. So that would make a lot of sense. We have that fight, cue it up, give Sean O'Malley one last chance, this amazing superstar, to go back and get the belt. Then you could have a super fight or a really big fight between Sean O'Malley and Umar. If Sean O'Malley does win, if he doesn't, then we have finally Umar against Merab. Let maybe Umar get another fight in between. But I don't know what the UFC is going to do. People are saying they're going to give it to Umar next, and then maybe Sean goes up and fights Umar thereafter. Let's see what happens. Very interesting. So a lot of things have gone down in the world of mixed martial arts in the UFC in particular for a week where, there's no big fights on the horizon, not until the December 7th, I believe, is the first big card. So anyways, that's all we got for today. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. So sorry again that Justin couldn't be here, but hopefully this was an entertaining show and gave you some interesting updates on what's been going on. Make sure to like this video if you did like it, and make sure to subscribe if you want to see more from the 10-7 MMA show. Hey, Celine, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And happy Thanksgiving to you. I know it's not Thanksgiving in France, but Thanksgiving, what is it about? It's about gratitude and being together with family, so we can all try to celebrate that anyways on a daily basis. So there we go. We will see you guys on Monday. Take it easy.